What's going on, everyone? It's Sean from All Things EV, and in this video, we cover Tesla's Q4 2018 earnings call, and I'm super pumped about this. This is actually the first time that I've ever done something like this, added my commentary on top of an earnings call. Traditionally, they're quite boring and dry, but this one is actually different. I'll explain why in just a moment. On this earnings call that happened earlier in the week, Elon Musk opens up with some initial commentary or introduction, and he provides some interesting insights on a few areas. The first one is profit and growth from the previous quarter that just ended, Q4 2018. And he goes into improving service operations, then new products that are coming in 2019. And then he addresses retail shareholder questions, and then lastly, investor shareholder questions. Let's jump into the profit and growth as he kind of summarizes what happened in the previous quarter. He said last year was the most challenging year for Tesla, but it was also the most successful. Tesla achieved an 80% market share in sales for EVs in the US in 2018, and they delivered more cars last year than in all previous years combined. Even in a global recession in 2019, they expect deliveries to be 50% better than 2018. So worst case scenario, they're looking at a 50% increase year over year in vehicles delivered. Their cash on hand was more than $700 million at the end of 2018, and they have enough money to pay for that convertible bond that's due, I think, sometime in March. Elon wraps up this section by saying that he is very optimistic about Tesla's profitability in Q1 of 2019, but not by much. The next topic that he discusses is improving service operations. And before I dive into this, this actually was directly in line with the question that I asked on say.com. And so it was really encouraging to hear Elon talk at length at some of the things that they have done most recently and will be doing in 2019 to make sure that owners have a far better experience than what they have had in the previous 2 quarters. So he starts off by saying that it is Elon's number one priority to improve service, which is great. They increased their service fleet to 411 vehicles, and he goes to share that this is something that they can ramp up pretty rapidly because the cost to do this is relatively low and far better than building an actual service center. This, to me, is a really bright note because I know a lot of people, myself included, really like the mobile service because of its convenience of the mobile service rep driving the Tesla vehicle to you wherever you're at. In fact, I just had this happen last Thursday or Friday where the mobile service came to my house. I pulled the car out into the driveway. They fixed a few things and they were off. And I was in my house hanging out with my children and doing some work. So it was extremely convenient. I think that they'll probably do more and more of this in 2019 to help serve owners and owners' needs. Elon also talks about the owner mobile app and the addition of being able to schedule a service appointment from the app. And he hints that they have a lot more plans to add to that service portion of the mobile app, which is extremely exciting. At the moment, to my knowledge, you cannot request a mobile service from the app. So hopefully they do that. I think that that will be one of the most popular requests from the mobile app, in my opinion. I think Tesla will comment on that later in the year if and when they do add the request to have someone come out instead of the owner drive to the service center. He also says that one of the ways that they're going to improve the owner experience with service is if and when a car experiences some sort of failure, be it a flat tire, be it a battery or drive unit, before the car comes to a complete stop, Tesla will automatically dispatch a tow truck or a loaner vehicle. And, I think this one's going to be hard to execute on because there's going to have to be some distinction between those that are in big cities where they have a fleet of loaners and available tow trucks at will to call, and people who live out in the country or far from service. For example, Tesla is not allowed in New Mexico. They don't have any service and they don't have any sales. So what are they going to do in situations like that? Now, I just read an article today that New Mexico is moving towards allowing non-franchise dealerships to come into the state. But, what are they going to do in those situations where you're out in the middle of nowhere? They're going to have some sort of variable or set some sort of expectation that if you are in certain areas, it might take a little bit longer. And lastly, Elon talks extensively about how they've just had a really, his words, boneheaded approach to parts. So he says that improving parts distribution by stocking all common parts at service centers is going to be a way that they shorten the turnaround time for a customer vehicle that's being worked on. So he talks about some of the most common parts that are requested or needed from service centers and just having them on hand and having an inventory of those parts at the actual service center. So he uses the example of if you need to have a front fascia replaced, that they just have an inventory of the most common paint colors available. So it's just basically a retrofit. You come in, and he uses the example of Jiffy Lube in 8 minutes and then out. He talks about having that experience with some of these most common parts replacements. So that, I think, is a really, really promising move towards improving the service experience with owners. I was a little bit disappointed. I really was hoping for some commentary on how they're going to improve the communication between Tesla and owners, because to me, in my impression, not only from my experience with service, but also others who have shared their stories with me publicly and privately, that they seem to have a really, really difficult time not only communicating, but following up with things that they've promised. And I hear a lot from owners of Tesla told me that they were going to reach back out to me and follow up with something, but they never did. I never heard from them. Those sort of things. So what is Tesla going to do to improve the actual communication? Maybe the mobile app and the automation and self-service of that mobile app is a huge part of that. And to me, that's okay. I just think that it's really important for Tesla to improve that communication from the organization itself to owners. I'm hoping that some of the things that they hinted they were working on will be centered around improving that communication, because to me, that is a really huge deficiency. And the last portion of the introduction by Elon, he talks about upcoming new products and things that they are actively working on for 2019, and he starts with the Model Y. He says Model Y has completed engineering and parts, and that 75% of parts of the Model Y will be shared with the Model 3, which should reduce the capital expenditures for the Model Y. He compares that to Model S and X and says that Model X only shared 30% of the same parts as Model Y. He compares that to Model S and X and says that Model X only shared 30% of the same parts as the S. And he says that the Model X was the Fabergé egg of their fleet, and I had no clue what he was talking about. And clearly, I haven't seen enough James Bond old school movies, because I had to Google this one, and maybe some of you as well did. Some of the younger people who were listening to this phone call had to probably Google it just like I did. Elon also said that the production of the Model Y will most likely happen at Gigafactory 1 in Nevada. He said most likely, but he kind of hinted that it could possibly be somewhere else. I don't know if he was really being true and honest, or if he was trying to be coy in that they're working on some sort of something that has yet to be announced yet for production. He also says that demand for Model Y they expect to be 50% greater than Model 3, which is impressive. He says that the compact SUV market is the largest market globally for car demand. So I understand why they're putting so much time and energy into getting this out by the end of 2019, hopefully, and certainly 2020. He wraps up the introductory comments by sharing a little bit more information about Gigafactory Shanghai by saying that, of course, it has begun and began in January of 2019, and the idea will be to have full production by end of year at about 3,000 units per week of the Model 3, and that includes body, paint, final assembly, general assembly, and module production. So they're really putting a lot of energy into getting this Shanghai Gigafactory up and running. It is a core component to getting that $35,000 Model 3 into the hands of owners. Tesla then transitions the earnings call to the retail investor questions from say.com, which is a huge thing because, to my knowledge, I don't know if this has happened ever that a publicly traded company has taken questions from shareholders. So I just want to give a big thanks to Tesla, Elon, and the head of investor relations, Martin, for taking a big risk here in addressing these questions. And a big shout out to Say and Gally from Hyperchange for spearheading this platform. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to see this develop. And I was, just as of last night, I was texting Gally some additional ideas on how they could bolster the platform and make it an even better experience for the next Tesla earnings call. So let's jump into the questions here. But before I do that, I just want to give you a summary of what happened collectively from every retail shareholder. So by the earnings call, there were over 200 questions and nearly 200,000 shares represented and about $62 million worth of shares, which is extremely exciting. So the very most popular one comes from yours truly, and it has to do with this deteriorating customer service. And the question says, well, first, let me just tell you how popular it was. It had over 72,000 shares represented and 311 votes. And my question goes as followed. Owners, many of them with large followings online, are becoming very vocal about Tesla's worsening customer service experience with delivery, service, and repair. This has a severe impact on sales and returning sales. What are you doing to change this growing negative reputation? And if you listen to the earnings call, they sort of, Martin jumps on and says, well, I think we've already addressed the question about service at length in the opening remarks, and they move on to the next question. And at first I was like, what? Wait a minute. This is the most popular question and you're just sort of glossing over it. But as I went back to listen to the earnings call a couple of times over after the fact, I really think that this was that Tesla did the best thing that they could possibly do in the current situation by having Elon talk literally at length about the things that they're doing. And he says that it's his number one priority to fix this in Q1 of 2019. And so I'm extremely pleased. I had a couple of people ask me on Twitter after the fact my thoughts on it, and I'm ready to say that I'm completely satisfied with it. I have some theories on why maybe they didn't read it word for word, but to me, it doesn't really matter at this point. What really matters is that owners, you all who are watching this, who own a Tesla, and myself, and the owners that I represent for the Denver Tesla Club, start to see some improvement on the customer service side. Tesla and Elon Musk have clearly stated that this is something that is of the utmost importance to them. Next question had just a little under 70,000 shares and 117 votes, and asked, how are you feeling about demand across the production line right now?
I mean, my best guess, this is just a guess, my best guess for demand of Model 3 worldwide is something, in a strong economy, is something on the order of 700,000 or 800,000 units a year. That's my best guess for demand of Model 3 in a strong economy. If the economy goes into a recession, then I think that could be something on the order of 40% less. But I think even in a recession, worldwide demand is still something on the order of 500,000 for Model 3. For S and X, we did eliminate the 75 kilowatt version of S and X to provide more differentiation relative to 3, and then why that's coming out. I think we could see a slight decline in total vehicles, but I think the net cash flow from S and X is likely to be very similar. So probably no major change in net cash flow for S and X.
Next question had just over 46,000 shares and 130 votes. Says, can you please share an update on full self-driving?
We already have full self-driving capability on highway. So from highway on-ramp to highway exit, including passing cars and going from one highway interchange to another, full self-driving capability is there. In a few weeks, we'll be pushing an update that will allow the option of removing stalk confirm in markets where regulators approve it, which we believe that will be the case in the U.S., for example. And over time, we think probably all regulators will approve it. But we kept the stalk confirm there just to make sure that we took care of any strange corner cases. And it's really quite sublime if you have stalk confirm off and the car goes from highway on ramp, passes slower cars, takes an interchange, and then takes the exit, and then comes to a stop after the exit. So it's really quite profound to have that experience. Then the next part of full self-driving would really be is traffic lights is hard. So stop streets are pretty easy because you can essentially geocode those, and it's easy to recognize stop signs. Traffic lights and intersections will be the next really tricky one, and then navigating complex parking lots and if you're underground in a mall parking lot with a lot of traffic and pedestrians, and it's on multiple levels, that kind of thing is where things get tricky. With the release of enhanced or advanced summon, you'll see the first indications of the car being able to navigate complex parking lots. Also coming out fairly soon, probably next month. And in development mode, the car does all of the things that I just mentioned in development mode. So it recognizes traffic lights and stop signs, and you can basically has all the functionality in development mode. It's really just a question of getting the reliability of recognizing traffic lights to several nines. It's I guess 98% good right now, but we need it to be 99.999. Really extremely reliable. So, I mean, in a nutshell, when do we think the capability will be there for? When will we think it's safe for full self-driving? It's probably towards the end of this year, and then it's up to regulators to decide when they want to approve that.
The next question is just under 45,000 shares and 138 votes, and says, if and when will Tesla switch to 2170 cells? What % range improvement do you expect?
We have no plans to switch S and X to 2170 and can't comment on future product developments.
This one to me was a little bit of a surprise. I know a lot of the Tesla community was expecting and anticipating a switch to the 2170 cells. And I think that for Elon to respond pretty emphatically that they don't have any plans in the near future to switch to 2170 was interesting to me. But even more interesting was his answer to the range improvement question by responding with he can't comment on future development. To me, that sort of hinted at the fact that they do have plans to improve the range of the S and the X, but they can't share more about it. So I wonder if they're not going to add the 2170 cells to S and X, will they keep the 18650 or will they move to a different form factor? If they keep the 18650, maybe they've got some improved energy density. Last question from Say.com. Retail investor had just under 38,000 shares and 188 votes. Asks, and this is from Galley. He asks, where will the Semi and Model Y be produced? Can you share a timeline on an expected production ramp of these vehicles?
As mentioned earlier, the Model Y we think most likely will be produced at Gigafactory. Unless we encounter some obstacle, that's the default plan that we're proceeding towards, and it's fast, low risk, and relatively low capex. In terms of probably there's initial production of Model Y in very low volume early next year. But then it always takes time to ramp up any production system, and that's difficult to predict the shape of that S-curve. We feel confident saying there'll be volume production of Model Y by the end of next year. In between the beginning of next year with low volume, it always starts with very low and it grows exponentially. From beginning of last year to end of next year, it's difficult to predict that ramp. So that's our expectation for Y. For Semi, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I want to start next year as well.
Yeah.
But the first units will be, this is Jerome, first units will be for our own usage.
Yeah.
So depends how many trucks we use for our own usage to move the parts and the vehicle to different locations. And then we'll start delivering to outside customers.
And then the Tesla pickup truck, we might be ready to unveil that this summer. It'll be something quite unique, but like anything else.
After they finish addressing the retail shareholder questions, they move to institutional investors and analysts, and I've got to forewarn you that it gets exponentially more boring from these people because they are literally coming from some of the most stodgiest institutions around the world. It does get pretty boring, and what I'm going to do here is just summarize my first impressions of it, and I'll put their specific questions in the video description so that you can read through them in detail. But it basically centers around Model 3. There's a lot of analysts that want to know about the cost, how they're going to attempt to reduce or get to that lowest cost or standard version of the Model 3. And Tesla essentially says that it's a combination of things. It's a combination of reducing the cost of the drivetrain as well as improving the production. There's a lot of analysts that are interested in what the demand is like in Europe and China, and Elon Musk and Deepak sort of shrug that off and say that they don't really pay attention to demand. However, there is a lot of demand, but they pay more attention to the actual sales and orders of the Model 3, but they didn't really go into detail about what the order levels are like. So I think the interesting thing here is that Tesla says that there is a lot of interest in the Model 3 internationally. On the phone call, they only talked about Europe and China, but they also hinted at the fact that they want to introduce the right-hand drive version of the Model 3 as well, and that Gigafactory Shanghai is an important and key part of getting to the 35K version. There was also some significant interest from analysts on how Tesla is poised to respond to a potential impending recession. And this to me was interesting too, and a little bit of a surprise to hear so many analysts and Tesla bring up the fact that in the next 18 to 24 months we could see a recession. To me, it's interesting because I'm in an industry in residential real estate here in Denver, where of course a recession does impact my business and my ability to grow my business and take care of my family. But Tesla essentially says that the layoffs that they did in January 2019 is one of the key factors in positioning Tesla to respond well to a recession. They also said that they plan on improving the processes in production to make sure that they're running the most efficient business as possible. So Tesla's ready for a recession. I think that they've commented on what they expect production to be like if a recession does indeed come. So, it's sort of a moot point that yes, if it comes, Tesla's ready to respond. They're running incredibly lean with this most recent layoff, and they spoke relatively positive about it. That wraps up this video summarizing the Q4 2018 earnings call. What are your thoughts on this? Did you find it interesting? Did you find my commentary valuable? This is the first time that I've done something like this at length, and I wanted to because of how they were addressing the retail investor questions, and of course the commentary around how they responded to the customer service question that I had. I'd love to know if you'd like to see something like this in the future from me. Put it in the comments down below. And I have provided a sort of a high-level notes of the earnings call in the video description and on my website. So you're welcome to take a look at that more in detail. And thank you so much. For those that are new to the channel, consider subscribing. And if you're a regular, hit the like button. And I'll absolutely see everyone on the next video here coming very, very soon.